Once upon a time, in a village nestled among towering mountains and winding rivers, there lived a girl named Lulu. She was beautiful, with skin the color of sun-kissed earth, and eyes that sparkled with quiet kindness. Her heart was gentle, her spirit unshakable, yet life had already dealt her a heavy hand. Lulu's mother had fallen ill and passed away when Lulu was still young, leaving her alone with her father, her cold and unforgiving stepmother, and her two stepsisters. Her stepmother, a woman as cruel as a thorn bush, treated Lulu harshly from the very first day. She assigned her the hardest chores in the house, scolded her for every minor mistake, and never offered a word of kindness or comfort. Every morning, while her stepsisters rose early to dress neatly and attend school, Lulu woke to the sound of her stepmother's sharp voice. She swept the floors until her arms ached, cooked meals under the relentless sun, and carried heavy water pots to the farm. Her little hands were blistered, her back often sore, but she never complained aloud. Despite the cruelty, Lulu's heart remained soft. She smiled at the birds, whispered to the flowers, and quietly tended to the small animals in her care. She often thought of her mother and prayed that her spirit was watching, wishing she could offer guidance or comfort. Sometimes, at night, she would sit by the window, listening to the wind whistle through the trees, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She wondered why life seemed so unfair and whether she would ever know a moment of true peace. Her father, a kind but weary man, tried to protect her when he could. He worked tirelessly as a farmer, climbing the tall palm trees to collect sap for palm wine and laboring in the fields under the harsh sun. He often cast worried glances at Lulu, wishing he could shield her from her stepmother's cruelty. Yet, despite his love, he could not always be there. The house seemed like a cage, and Lulu's youth was slipping away under the weight of endless chores and heartache. One evening, after the sun dipped behind the mountains, Lulu sat quietly by the fire, her hands red and raw from the day's labor. Her stepsisters giggled at the table, their voices sharp and taunting, while her stepmother gave her a cold stare. "You are lucky we even feed you," she hissed. "A poor farmer's daughter like you should be grateful for what little you have." Lulu lowered her eyes, holding back the rising storm of emotion. She longed to cry, to scream, to tell someone how much it hurt to be unloved, unwanted, and treated as less than human in her own home. But she swallowed the lump in her throat. She knew that patience and endurance were all she had. She walked quietly, her heart aching, yet she refused to allow bitterness to take root. Even in her suffering, Lulu found small joys. She would sometimes wander to the edge of the village, collecting wild berries and speaking softly to the birds. She cherished the warm touch of sunlight on her face and the scent of the earth after rain. These simple moments reminded her that life still held beauty, even when surrounded by sorrow. And so, day after day, Lulu carried her burdens in silence, her spirit quietly resilient. She bore the harsh words, the endless chores, and the unfair treatment with a strength that seemed almost otherworldly. Deep within, she hoped that one day, her patience and goodness would be recognized, and that life would reward her gentle heart for all the suffering she endured. Little did she know, a day of tragedy and a path to extraordinary fortune was approaching, a day that would change her life forever. The next morning, the village was quiet, and the sun peeked timidly over the mountain tops, spilling golden light across the dusty paths. Lulu awoke before dawn, her body stiff and aching from the day before. She quietly prepared herself for the journey to the forest with her father. Today, they were to collect fresh palm wine, a task that was both necessary and dangerous, but one her father had done countless times. As they walked along the forest path, the air was filled with the sweet scent of wildflowers and the song of birds. Lulu picked small berries along the way, savoring their sweetness and finding a brief moment of comfort amid the heavy burdens of her life. Her father, strong and careful, climbed the tall, swaying palm trees with the ease of someone who had spent decades among their branches. From below, Lulu watched him walk, pride swelling in her chest at his skill and resilience. Then, in an instant, everything changed. A sudden snap echoed through the forest. Lulu looked up, heart leaping into her throat, just in time to see her father's hand slip from the trunk. He fell, his body tumbling through the branches and landing with a sickening thud on the ground below. Time froze. Lulu screamed, a raw, piercing sound that shook the trees themselves. She ran to him, trembling, tears streaming down her face, and shook his lifeless body. "Papa! Wake up! Please, Papa!" Her voice cracked with desperation. "I can't be alone." But he did not move. The warmth she had always known, the gentle voice that comforted her in the darkest nights, was gone. She pressed her cheek to his chest, feeling the absence of his heartbeat, and sobbed until her body shook. The forest seemed to close in around her, the bird's song fading into silence. In that moment, the world itself seemed to mourn with her. After the burial, the house felt emptier than ever. Her father had been her protector, her comfort, and the only person who had truly cared for her. Without him, Lulu's stepmother grew even colder, her cruelty sharpening like a blade. From dawn to dusk, Lulu labored tirelessly, carrying heavy water pots, tending the goats, cleaning the farm, and selling produce at the market. Her stepsisters laughed as they walked to school, their books clutched under their arms, while Lulu's hands were raw and blistered, her body weary and thin. One evening, after a long day under the sun, Lulu returned home, aching from the weight of her chores. Her stepmother's eyes gleamed with harsh judgment. "If you do not finish perfectly tomorrow," she snapped, "you will not eat." Lulu lowered her head, swallowing the lump of fear in her throat. She longed to cry, to beg, but she only nodded silently, hiding the sorrow that threatened to consume her. Her body was tired, but her spirit, though wounded, remained unbroken. Even in these moments of despair, Lulu's heart held on to small sparks of hope. She whispered to the birds in the trees, murmured prayers to the spirits of her mother and father, and found comfort in the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. She dreamed of a day when her hard work and patience would bear fruit, when kindness would be recognized and cruelty punished. Yet the cruel word of her stepmother and stepsisters left little room for dreams. One peaceful Sunday, as the sun painted the sky in warm oranges and pinks, a small accident would set the stage for a new trial, one that would test not only Lulu's strength but the depth of her compassion. A single dropped water pot, a lie whispered in anger, and the weight of superstition would send Lulu on a path that was terrifying, yet strangely magical. She did not yet know that her courage and kindness, even in the face of unbearable fear, would lead her to a reward beyond her wildest imagination. That peaceful Sunday afternoon, Lulu's heart pounded as she carried a heavy water pot through the forest. The sun was high, the birds chirped, and the wind rustled the leaves above, but her thoughts were consumed with fear. Her stepmother had ordered her to fetch water from the stream, knowing the villagers believed it was forbidden on Sundays. The curse of the water spirits haunted every step she took, yet she dared not disobey. Tears blurred her vision as she walked. Her small hands gripped the pot tightly, her bare feet sinking into the soft, muddy earth. "Please, protect me," she whispered, praying that her obedience would not bring harm. Every shadow seemed larger than life, every rustle of the leaves a whisper of danger. When she finally reached the stream, she began filling the pots, her hands trembling with fear and fatigue. It was then she heard a frail voice calling to her. "Please, my daughter, can you spare me some water? I am so very thirsty." Lulu turned and saw an old woman, sitting hunched beside a tiny, weathered hut. Her eyes were tired but filled with a quiet kindness. Without hesitation, Lulu lifted a small cup from her water pot and offered it. She helped the woman fill her own jars, her heart softening with compassion, even as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. The old woman smiled, a glimmer of warmth breaking through her wrinkles. "My dear child, you have shown a pure heart," she said. "As a reward, enter my hut and choose one of the 2 baskets. But remember, do not open it until you are safely home." Inside the dim hut, Lulu saw 2 baskets, one large, one small. She hesitated for a moment, her heart racing, then carefully picked the smaller one, sensing that patience and humility were sometimes worth more than size. She carried it home, her steps light despite her tired legs, her mind alive with curiosity and hope. At home, she placed the basket on the table and slowly lifted the lid. A brilliant light erupted, filling the room with dazzling colors. Gold coins cascaded like rain, sparkling jewels tumbled one after another, and treasures of every kind spilled forth. Lulu gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief and joy. Tears of relief and happiness streamed down her cheeks as she realized that her kindness had brought her this unimaginable reward. Her stepmother and stepsisters watched, their faces twisting with jealousy and greed. Envy burned like fire in their hearts, and they demanded to have baskets of their own. They rushed to the stream, seeking the old woman, but their intentions were different. Their hearts were filled with greed, not compassion. The old woman, wise and discerning, welcomed them but smiled knowingly. She gestured to the two baskets inside her hut. "Choose, but do not open them until you are safely home," she instructed. The sisters, blinded by desire, grabbed the larger basket, convinced it would contain more riches than Lulu's. When they returned and tore off the lid, their screams pierced the air. A swarm of angry bees, biting ants, and stinging insects erupted from the basket, attacking them mercilessly. They ran from the house, covered in painful red marks, their cries echoing through the village, while Lulu watched silently, her heart heavy with pity yet aware of the justice in their punishment. That day marked a turning point in Lulu's life. The cruel chain of suffering began to break, and the seeds of her future happiness and generosity were planted. Her kindness had been recognized, and her heart, though battered, had led her to a reward far greater than wealth. It had brought justice, hope, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. From the day of the magical basket, Lulu's life changed forever. No longer weighed down by endless labor and cruelty, she found freedom in ways she had never imagined. Yet, even with her newfound wealth, her heart remained gentle and humble. She remembered the fear in her stepsister's eyes, the sting of injustice she had endured, and the kindness of the old woman who had rewarded her selflessness. Lulu used her riches not to live in selfish luxury, but to help those who were suffering. She repaired homes, bought food for the hungry, and healed the sick with medicine and care. Children laughed in the streets again because of her generosity, and the village slowly began to thrive. People came from far and near to see the girl with the kind heart, who had endured so much and yet gave so freely. Meanwhile, her stepmother and stepsisters were left to face the consequences of their greed. Their pride and selfishness had blinded them, and the swarming insects had left scars, both on their skin and in their hearts. They tried to regain favor with the villagers and even with Lulu, but their envy had already been exposed. No amount of pleading or anger could erase the pain they had caused her. Slowly, they fell into disgrace, shunned by neighbors who had witnessed their cruelty. Through it all, Lulu remained compassionate. She did not gloat over their misfortune, nor did she seek revenge. Instead, she forgave, quietly, knowing that their suffering had been its own lesson. Her life was full now, not of sorrow, but of purpose. She could walk through the village without fear, she could sleep at night knowing she was safe, and she could dream freely of a life built on her own hard work and the blessings she had earned. Years passed, and Lulu grew into a wise and respected woman. The villagers often recounted her story to their children, teaching them that kindness, patience, and generosity would always be rewarded, while envy and cruelty would lead to downfall. Lulu never forgot the hardships she had endured, and she honored her parents' memory by living a life of integrity and compassion. The mountains and forests that had once seemed to loom over her with fear now felt like guardians of her story. She often walked among them, remembering the days of struggle and the lessons learned beneath the sunlight and shade. And in every act of kindness she performed, she carried the quiet joy of knowing that she had stayed true to her heart, even when the world had tried to break her. And so, the village never forgot Lulu, the girl with the gentle spirit and the brave heart, who had faced unimaginable hardships and triumphed through courage, patience, and compassion. Her story was told for generations, not just as a tale of wealth and reward, but as a shining example of what it truly means to live with a kind heart. Lulu had endured sorrow, injustice, and fear, yet she rose above it all, not through anger or revenge, but through love and generosity. And in her rise, she showed the world that even the gentlest of hearts can become the strongest, the most enduring, and the most luminous of all.